And we're back, and it's COMP1073 here at Georgian College, and winter 2016 semester, and it's week 4, lesson 4, part 3 of our broadcast. Last time we did a whole continuous deployment, the whole gamut of stuff. We've loaded up Bootstrap, and our friendly neighborhood Andrew says to me, "Hey Tom, you always load Bootstrap, but you never use it. What do you do?" So Bootstrap is a CSS framework that we're going to just quickly use some parts of today and more as we go. And one of the things we do with Bootstrap is, when we go back to our folder, here's our folder, notice how my body tag here is got my h1 tag and my paragraph tag, and they're all kind of just sitting there, right? So instead of writing my own CSS, what Bootstrap allows me to do is set things up by using some custom classes that come with Bootstrap, all right? So that's the first thing we do. So with Bootstrap, all I have to do is I'm going to do something like this. I'm going to make I can make a div tag or a section tag or some kind of semantic HTML tag. For example, a tag called main. This is my main content, and in my main content, if I use emit, or if I just press main, right? The way I add a class with emit is the dot. So I just go dot. This is how I do class. Watch the new syntax. All right. So main dot, and then for my class, I'm going to say container. All right. So main dot container. This is almost the same structure you'd see with CSS. If I press tab, now I have main class equals to container and then main, right? Let me undo that again so I can show you. So main dot container. Okay. Here's another thing I do. If I undo that, if I just go dot container and I press tab, I get a div, right? So if you don't know what it is, dot container div. If I do pound container and press tab, I get a div with an ID. Right? I can do both. I can do main dot container pound, right? Main content, let's say as an example. And press tab. Right? So I can get both those things done. So I don't have to type all that stuff in by hand. It saves us it saves us from finger typing errors, right? We forgot a tab or forgot a closing tag or something else we didn't do right. It does it all for us. Okay, press enter to give us some space. And what I want to do here is I want to grab all this code, right? And I want to move it up, right? Well, you can do that with Visual Studio Code by highlighting everything and print. I think if you press Alt on the PC or Option on the Mac, right, you can move it up, the whole block, so it's contained inside my other one. So I don't have to copy paste. Try it out. Is it Alt? Alt or Option, right? If you press Option on the Mac and you highlight everything and you press up the up arrow, it'll move things around. I can move this whole code block around, all right? Which is way easier than cutting and pasting, and you can move things around, reorder things. Okay, cool. So I've done that.
Can you do that again?
Sure. Let's undo. Right? And if I press Option, I can move this thing around anywhere I like inside my container object by pressing Option and the up arrow or down arrow, or on the PC it's Alt. Hold Alt down and press up arrow so you can move things around. This is kind of the easy way to do it and reorganize everything. Yes?
Is there a box selection?
Yes, there is, yes. We'll talk about it later. I don't want to freak everyone out, all right? But yes, there is, just like like we do in brackets, exactly the same, right? Okay, let's look at this and right-click. If I right-click anywhere in my document, click Format Code, it'll indent everything beautifully for us, right? So if I've missed some kind of indentation or something, if I click right-click and format code, Visual Studio will go out and format the code the way it feels is the best way to format it. Okay, cool. So I've got my container. What does this container class do for us? Well, let's take a look at what I've got already, right? Built into Bootstrap. It looks like this. Look how I've got no margins in here at all for my h1 tag and my paragraph element or whatever. There's no margins here. But now that I've got this Bootstrap, it adds some margins. Let me show you this. So first, I've added Bootstrap. And I've added this first class. I've made a change to my file, right? So I'm going to save everything, and I'm going to go into my command line. When I clear it, the command is to clear the screen is clear for the Mac or Unix, Linux, and CLS for Windows machines, right? And in here I'm going to say git add dot to add everything again. Git commit. This is my second commit, right? -m, and I'll say added container class or Bootstrap container. We can see, and by the way, you can do some kind of short form like BS container. Don't look at it as BS. bootstrap container, right, to main main section in HTML document, index.html. It's just longer kind of commit. Okay, good. And then I'm going to say git push -u, or just no -u, origin, if I can type properly, master. And when I do that, it goes up to Git and updates. That's my second commit. Hey, you know what? With my second commit, I'm almost there from getting four full marks. Because I've actually done some extra work. Now you have to do some extra commits. I'm looking for at least 4 or 5 commits, I'll be honest with you, because it takes at least 4 or 5 commits minimum to do some kind of features on your site, right? Yeah.
I'm just curious, it would save me a lot of hassle. How do you go back one directory in command prompt? Like to go forward and type it in.
On the command prompt? Or are you on a Mac or Windows machine?
Windows.
You would go cd ...
That goes back one.
Yeah, it goes back up 1, right? And if I go back into it, I can go comp. I would type if I have the name, I can type part of the name in Windows or Mac, right? And if I do one of those and press tab, it'll actually put the rest of my name in and press enter. So it'll get me in there if I have it. So lesson, let me go back up and do that again. Lesson 4, because that's where I'm at, right? There we go.
Okay.
And in Windows, to see the directory, it's dir, right? Okay, let me clear the screen again. All right, so I've updated everything. Let's see if it updated how it looks on Azure now, because I'm sure it's deployed. Refresh. And this is the effect of Bootstrap. Take a look how nice it gives me a little bit of a margin here. And it pushes this down. So it gives me margins around the whole thing, Bootstrap. So it's got built-in CSS that you don't have to write. Hey, I want to make a really cool navigation bar with Bootstrap. How do I do it, and how do I do it quick? I don't want to think too much about it. Okay, let's go up on getbootstrap.com, right? So I'm just going to click another link here, Get Bootstrap, and then I'll stop this and we'll get back into some stuff, some code. If I can talk about it, I meant Get Bootstrap. Here we go. And when I go here to Get Bootstrap, I can click on CSS, right? And underneath the CSS, they have a couple of things here. They have things like, how do I do my grid system? And this is pretty cool. It tells you how to do grid system and everything else. And it talks about how to use Bootstrap and gives you hinting on how to get things done. But what I'm really looking for is components. Click on components on the top. Under components on the right, you can see that I want to make a nav bar. Here's a nav bar. Click the nav bar. And there's a code snippet right here to make the nav bar. Right now, I don't need all of this, but we can take this and modify it. Right? So I want you to grab all this. Actually, I want you to see what you get. So just go over here where it says nav bar. You're going to get this whole nav bar link here. Copy it. Right there it is. It's copied to my clipboard. I'm going to go back into my code. Right. Here it is, and above my main container, right? Above my main container, up here, right? I'm going to paste it. I got all this extra code here. I just grabbed this from Bootstrap, right? And let's just right-click here and format code just to make everybody happy. So I've got my container. I've done all this stuff, and there's some pieces that I don't need. We're going to go over here and just delete pieces we don't need, right? Because I want my nav bar to be the right nav bar. So notice where it says right nav bar over here. I want to keep this piece, but I probably don't need anything else. For now, though, let's see what we got. All right. So let's see if just by copy and pasting Bootstrap really quickly. Let's see what we get. Well, I just made a change to my files, and I need to auto deploy to Azure. So this is a great opportunity again. So I'm going to go back to here. I'm going to say git add dot right git commit -m, and I'll say added BS navbar to index.html, right? That's what I did. There it is. And then I'll say git push origin, if I can type today, master, and press enter. And now that's going to update my repository yet again. I've got my third commit. Whoa, I'm well on my way to getting 100% on my structure. Yeah.
What's the -u?
Dash U is unconditional. We only do that once at the beginning when we set up our repository the first time. Okay, so that's cool. Let's take a look and see what it looks like on our Azure site. Just refresh. It should be up there. And take a look. We got this, kind of like this little nav bar with very little effort, right? Talk about templating. This is the easy way to template. And never mind that, but it's responsive. So if I actually go to my site here, it becomes a responsive layout. Actually, I get this little hamburger here, right? That gives me all my links, right?
Show me how we did it again.
Huh?
Can you show what you did again with the phone?
Yeah, I just went to this place here under components. I went to navbar,
Yeah, no, after you got it.
copy all this,
Yeah.
right, and then just pasted it
Yeah, and then-
above this, above my my main container, which is right here,
Yeah.
right? Pushed it to GitHub, done.
That's it. You didn't alter any of the code.
I altered nothing.
Mine doesn't work.
Okay, we'll fix it.
I'm not doing it on GitHub, I'm doing it on the
We'll
GitHub.
fix it.
should work, right?
Okay. So if I don't need everything, right, really quickly, if I go here and if I don't need everything, right, like for example, I don't need this link, this drop down, this search bar, this submit button. I don't need all that stuff, but I do want these two. I don't care about this drop down. I do want my brand. Hint, hint. This is where I would put my icon or my some kind of logo right here in my brand. Just replace the brand with an image, right? Worst case scenario, to bootstrap yourself, right? I want to get rid of all this, but I want to keep some of this, the right nav bar, because there's two nav bars here. There's the left nav bar and there's the right nav bar. Well, you can find that, and if you look for some documentation, and we can't go over it today, just from a time constraint perspective, but if you look here, you notice that there's several different unordered lists. The one piece you need is this top piece. So this top piece where it says nav bar header, we're going to keep that. The button, that's the nav bar collapse. These three icon bars represent the hamburger. That's the hamburger that you see when we collapse everything. So if I go back to my to here, and if I just change my orientation to a smaller screen, notice how it becomes a hamburger. That hamburger is actually drawn by borders. That's all it is. It's a border, right? Which is right here. This is these icon bars right here. That's all that is, right? So don't move that. Don't delete that piece. We need that, okay? And my navbar brand, where it says navbar brand, feel free to change this, anything that's inside the navbar brand, instead of it saying brand, put in there an image, your favorite image, whatever it is, of your logo. That's where it would go, right? And you can use CSS to arrange it properly, your own CSS in this case. Okay, cool. Now this piece, it just tells you what to do. It says collect the nav links, forms, and other content for toggling, right? So here's my collapse, navbar collapse. I need that piece. So line 36 of my code, I need that piece, right? And notice that I've got some repetition. I've got a navbar nav here, this whole UL right here, underneath my collapse, navbar collapse. And I've got a form, which I'm not going to use, right? And I've got another UL, which is a navbar right. And navbar right is just a class that tells that from Bootstrap, it's a built-in class in Bootstrap that moves all of our links to the right. That's all it does. So it floats to the right nicely. It does all that work for us. We don't have to work for it, right? So we don't need anything after the collapse, navbar collapse, that piece. Let's get rid of this UL underneath the navbar nav. Get rid of all this. Oops. Whoa. Sorry, I got to go here. And up to the form. So up to line 58. So basically from this first UL and including the first form, get rid of all that. Press delete. By the way, if you don't know what I just did, you can always look on my GitHub afterwards to check your code versus mine, right, to see what I've done. Okay, cool. So I've deleted that part, and there's other things I don't need. This list item here, notice this list item is of type dropdown. I don't need a dropdown right now, so let's get rid of that too. So I'm going to get rid of this dropdown, right? Bye-bye. So now I have a single link in a navbar, and this is a great opportunity to do things like put the stuff I need for my navbar. Like, as an example, my bio or about me. Here's about me. And let's put a couple of other links in here, right? Like, for example, projects. I'll probably put my projects in here as well, like some kind of projects page. And I can make this as flamboyant as I want. My projects, right? And let's take one more link, which we'll put in here, and we'll say in here, contact me, right? So we'll have a contact page. We'll have a link, and now we don't have any actual pages here, so we're just going to leave these blank. One thing I can also add in here, right, in my list item, and I know this as something we do in Bootstrap, we can put a class of active. If you put a class of active on a link, for example, my About Me page is my active link, it'll actually highlight that link automatically. It's all this, by the way, all these classes built into Bootstrap. There's nothing for you to do, right, to create this code. So now my big navbar has been reduced to this, right? From line 21, pretty much, what I have in my code, just underneath my body tag, all the way down to line 48, right? So about 20 lines of code or whatever, 24 lines of code. All right, so we've got all that. Again, you replace your brand with your icon or whatever you're going to make for your brand. Okay, we can do that later on. In fact, we can do that soon. I can use Font Awesome to create, I just used an icon from them. We'll do that in a second. Let's do this piece first. So save. I've made a change. I've updated my BS navbar, right? So let's do that as my change. I'm gonna go back into here. I'm almost there, man. I'm almost got 100% for my my stuff for on GitHub. So let's go git add dot git commit -m, and we'll say updated BS navbar. Right? That's what I did on index.html. There we go. Git push origin master. By the way, I could have spaced up to do that. And then once I've done that, now if you want to go check, if yours doesn't work like mine, or if you didn't see my steps, check my GitHub out. So go to georgiancollege.com, or github.georgiancollege, sorry. And underneath that, you look at my my new project, which is COMP1073 lesson 4. If you look at that, you can follow along if I'm going a little too quick for you. Cool. All right. So I've got some stuff going on, and as long as I'm good, if I didn't make any mistakes, and just check this out. I've got a div tag here that ends in a div tag here, and I've got a div tag here that ends in a div tag here, and I've got a UL that ends in a UL over here with a bunch of LIs inside. Here they are. Here's my LIs, right? My list items, right? And then it tells you how it layers out. So that's cool. So if I haven't made any mistakes, I'm pretty good. Let's take a look and see if we're good. I'm going to go to online on Azure and refresh, and let's see what I get. Hey, I got About Me, which is highlighted. Notice because I put the class active on my list item, right? I've got my projects and my Contact Me page. And if I go here and reduce these, now these are the ones that come up in my pages. Nice and quick. All right? Are you with me? I'm showing you some superpower magic for you guys to be superpowered when it comes to using Bootstrap, right? To understand. Andrew was asking, hey, why do I use Bootstrap? Do you know now why? Yeah, because it gives you like superpowers, right? Let's change our brand, and this is the last change we'll make before we get into our JavaScript really quickly. Let's change our brand to an icon, right? So if I don't know what my icons are for Font Awesome, right? I can always go there. Here's my Font Awesome website, and I want to use some kind of icon that's really cool, right? And if I want to look and see what the icons are, I can certainly go to search out those icons. So, if I don't know what to look for, as an example, I can certainly click on icons. And then further down here where it says search icons, if I want to do something like, I want to make my icon look like some kind of font or fort, right? So if I type in fort or castle, like so that's what I want my thing to look like. There's no castle, right? But let's say there's definitely a fort. And look, they have fort. They actually have Fort Awesome. I can use this little castle. I want to put this thing in there instead of the thing that says brand. So I want to put this little icon in there. How do I do that? You can make any icon you want, by the way, or make your own image that you want to put in there. Icon fonts are really cool though because they take up less load time than an actual image, like a PNG file or a GIF file. Right? So click this. It gives you some examples of what you want to see. I'm probably going to choose, just from a size perspective, this second one, right? So, or the main one, which is, and look, it just gives you the code right here. I class, and this is Font Awesome for the FA. That's what it stands for. FA Fort Awesome. Fort Awesome will be the icon type. That's what you're accessing. And because I've added Font Awesome into my file, if I just take this and copy it and go back to my code, where I see my brand, which is where it says brand in here, if I just paste it or copy over it, there it is. There's my brand, right? And to see that, I'm just going to make this bigger. Yeah, it just gives me that this is the standard one. I didn't choose a size yet. We'll modify it after if I need to. If I press save, right, and I want to test it, let's do that. I'll just go here and I'm now again. I may want to test locally. I've been testing every single time I've been kind of deploying to GitHub. The proper thing to do is to test locally. Let's test it locally just to make sure that it's there. So I'm going to right-click down here, and I'm going to open it up in Finder, Reveal in Finder, or Reveal in Explorer. When I do that, it's going to go here, and if I double-click on here, it's going to show me what I got, and that's pretty small, right? This is before I deploy. This is a local, development environment here, right? So that's pretty good. I got an icon there, right? And I want to use that icon, but a little bit bigger. So if I go back to Font Awesome, right? Notice how if I want to choose sizes, and if I go to icons, right, it talks about sizes and everything else. You can actually, or how to use. if I go get started, it shows you how to use CSS and everything else, and how to attach everything in your files. But there's also a place in here for examples. So here's some examples, right? And there's some basic icons, and there's some larger icons. Notice if I say FA, right, dash 2x, that's twice as large. So you just add that FA2x behind the size, the standard icons. Let's do that. So let's say FA2x. I copy this right here. Go back to here, and after the Fort Awesome font, I'm going to put that in there. So just copy and paste, FA-2x. That's all you have to do. And if I press save, and now if I test it locally, by going back to my local site, somewhere, wherever I have it, let's just do it again. I've got too many files open right now. Is it? Are you sure? Yes. It's too big, right? So maybe FA large, FALG is the right one to do. I'll make another adjustment. So I've made a couple of adjustments before I go up to the web, which is the right thing to do.
Can you do 1.5?
I can. I can see what the other things they have there. That's pretty good, actually. I like FA large. FA-LG looks like a little bit better. It's not the same size. If I hover over it, it looks like it's an actual clickable object. Right now, you can make it look whatever you like. But I've got basically my setup for my web page here. I've got everything I need. We're going to use this one as we go forward, right? Again, so you're going to see this kind of style over and over again. Okay, cool. Save. We have to auto-deploy. Sorry. We have to auto-deploy to GitHub again. Let's do this one more time, right? And all I've done here is added use an icon font from Font Awesome. I'm going to clear this, and I'll say git add dot git commit. I'm giving you some practice here. -m, and we're going to say added icon font for logo. Press enter, and then git push origin master, and that's going to pump it out to Azure. Now, if everything goes well, it should go well, right? Then when I go back up to Azure somewhere, which is here, I think, see where it says brand? After a while, if I refresh, it should give me the icon font, right? Which is nice. And what happens when I compress? If I go here, it stays, right? Which is kind of cool, right? So I've got a fully responsive app that allows me to go to my projects and everything else. Notice that my About Me page is the main page, right? So if I'm getting you well on your way to doing assignment 1, right? If your worst case scenario, if you don't know what to do. Questions before we move on to some JavaScript finally today, right? All right, so the power of getting bootstrapped, right? You got bootstrapped, guys and girls. And Font Awesome. Okay, let's go into our JavaScript code for the first time here. I'm going to go into JavaScript, go into my app.js. And here, instead of my console log, how about if I want to change, I want to create I want to change my content. I got all this lorem ipsum text. This is what you need to do for your assignment. And I want to inject some of my own paragraph, some of my own content. Well, I told you I need a variable. So how do we declare variables in JavaScript? Anyone remember? Var, right? So we go var. And I need to declare the variable name. So let's call this my first paragraph. I'm going to type it out, right? And I need to make this first paragraph, I need to link it somehow with my HTML. Right now, first paragraph is just an empty object. I don't even know what type it is. In order for me to link it to my HTML, I need to use a special, I need to call the document object itself. This is where we call, we've talked about the document object model. Well, the document object is the HTML page that I'm linking to. This document is linked to my HTML page, and I'm targeting a specific item in my HTML page, right? In order for me to do that, I can do it inline like this, where I have the equal sign, or let's just do it separate for now. I'll type in first paragraph, just to make it clear, equals to, ready? My document object, that's my it's referring to my document object, right? So my document object says, hey, take a look at my HTML page, my dot accessor, right, which looks at all the other sub-objects inside my document object, inside my HTML page. I want to use a special method called get. And notice if I start typing get, I've got a bunch of different get methods. And these are all the classic get methods we use in JavaScript. And I'm going to use get element by ID, which is the first one we should learn. All right, get element by ID. If I click that one, if I press open, it gives me here in Visual Studio Code, it gives me what it's needing, right? Here's what it requires. Here's the method signature. That's what we call it. The method signature here is saying, this is what I need to put into it, in order for my getElementID method to work, I need to put in a string. It's listening for a string which is of type elementID. What does that mean? Well, let's refer back to my index.html. I do have an ID for my main. My main class is container, and I made an ID of main content. I want to target this container, right? This container. Okay, cool. But what if I want to target my paragraph? I can't target my paragraph with document.getElementById unless I have an ID for my paragraph. So let's put an ID in there to give us a hook, is what I like to call it. So ID is equal to, right? Let's call it first paragraph. Why not? Right? Remember, we use classes for styles, and we use IDs for navigation and for using JavaScript. That is our main way we want to do things. We want to try and avoid using ID for CSS styles these days. Okay, that's kind of a no-no. Well, the new way of doing things. Okay, although you could if you wanted to. All right, so first paragraph is what we want to target. Paragraph. Make sure it's spelled correctly. Okay, now if I go back to my app.js, in here, in quotations, I'm going to put that exact ID. First paragraph. Now notice I've named it the same thing just to reduce errors. Okay, cool. And I press semicolon. So what am I doing here? If I hover over first paragraph, it tells you what is happening here. It says my first paragraph is of type any. I'm going through and saying, here's my document model, get my element by ID, and get a reference to something called first paragraph. And then what this assignment operator does is it creates a binding or a link between my actual element on my index.html and my variable called first paragraph. So my first paragraph is going to be filled with a reference, just a reference, almost like a pointer. I'm like, if I had a gun in my hand, if I pointed it, or some kind of laser pointer, my laser pointer is pointing at that first paragraph, I can actually target that first paragraph to do operations on it with JavaScript, okay, by doing this, document.getElementById. By the way, there's document.getElement by class name and so on, other ones. But I'm just showing you this one first. This is the main one we use a lot, okay? Now that I know that my first paragraph, I can access it, I can do something like this. First paragraph dot, and I can do inner HTML. If I type in inner HTML, right, is equal to, and I'll replace that inner HTML with my own, right? And if I made a mistake, by the way, it's always correctable, right? But let's just say this is correct. So first paragraph, that inner HTML, and I'm going to make my own. So here's my new paragraph data. Call it whatever you want, and press semicolon. So if this is going to work, right, if I do this properly, my variable first paragraph is going to point to this first paragraph. If I spell it properly, let's make sure I spelled it properly. If I didn't spell it properly, we're going to have problems, right? Because it won't work. It won't hook, right? And press save. Let's check it out locally to make sure it works. Okay? So I'm going to go back, make sure I save my index.html as well. Save all. If you're unclear, just save all. Right? That saves all the files. Notice I have two changes, one to my app.js and one to my index.html, because I added an ID to my index.html to create that hook. Now it's hookable. Without an ID, that element, I can't get at it this way that I'm showing you. There's other ways, but this is not this way. Okay, cool. Let's try this out. So what happens when I do this? I'm going to right click, and again, I'm going to reveal in Finder if I don't ever know where it is. I'm going to double click on my index.html. It's going to take me here, and notice that my paragraph text is changed to my new paragraph data. You should see this, right? So what have I done? I've taken inner HTML refers to that inner node, that text node, that belongs inside the paragraph. Remember I had those curly braces when I made the paragraph and I put lorem 100, right? Well, all that text that's a child of the paragraph, it belongs to the paragraph, I've replaced it with my string. That's all I've done.
So if you go back and just delete the comments and clean up your HTML page, because you're quotes in something.
I could do that, but this is what I want you to do for your assignment number 1. I want you to go and
See that we did the lorem 100 then.
No, I don't care about that. I care about you replacing you can actually enter blank divs or mains or whatever and just target those areas, those paragraphs. As long as it has an ID, you can target it and replace that data with your own. That's what I want you to do. Guys and girls, this is all I need you to do to inject code into, this is what this assignment's about, injecting code into your HTML. This is DOM manipulation 101, okay, at the very basic level. Questions? I mean, this is really it. I mean, if you think about it, if I want to make another one, you can target anything you want. And in fact, I can add additional data in here as well. So now that I've got this, what about if I want to style this data? I've got a hook into this paragraph, right? I want to hook it. So I can add styles to the data too. I can do all kinds of stuff to the paragraph tag. I can even add additional things, additional content, right? If we refer back to our, there's actually a couple of presentations ago, right? If I go back to one of my first presentations that we've done together, so if I go to courses, and if I go into your COMP1073, I see that today we're talking about storing data in JavaScript, and we're going to talk about functions in a second. But if I go to accessing the DOM, which is lesson 2, way back over here, right? So a couple of PowerPoints ago, it's up there. If I look at that PowerPoint for a second, and you can see that it's highlighted, it tells you what to look at. So the DOM talks about the DOM tree, it talks about working with the element node and the attribute node and so on. And there's some really clear examples in here, right, of how to access, how to set up the DOM tree. I just give you an example of a basic template that's in here. It talks about what the DOM tree looks like. For example, the top node, that HTML node with the two subnodes. My head tag, here's my head, and it contains a title and some meta tags. And it looks like there is some text. That text is the child node of the title tag, right? So whatever the title says, the text that's inside the title element itself, that is a node, the text node of my title tag, and so on. And this is a good example of what we've just done today, right? If you look at it. If I keep going down here, there's only 53 pages, but if you look down here, it gives you some details about how to target things like text and so on. And it even gives you code examples of how to do that. We create an ID, and we can create this. We use this as a hook. We use the ID element, the ID attribute inside of an element, right? As an example, as a hook to hook our index or our JavaScript. Okay, so we can target it with that document.getElementById. Down here in the code, right? I'm going to show you the code here. We have a couple of examples. Document.getElementById. It's got to be spelled this exact way because JavaScript, like we said before, one of the first lessons we had, is case sensitive. And if you put getElementById in any other way, like all lowercase, or you didn't type it properly, and if you didn't have good code hinting for Visual Studio Code, then it wouldn't work. It has to be case sensitive to use that method, yeah.
How does the document dot know where to find the HTML file?
Okay, you're talking about when I'm targeting the header?
The JS, right?
Let's go back there. So that's a good question. So here's my app, and I'm saying, here's my document. That's the whole document.
Right.
I'm using the getElementById method, and I'm looking at the ID that matches with first paragraph. And I made that here. Here's my first paragraph.
So in the code's perspective, it knows to go down a folder and look for that index HTML. How does it know how to find the HTML document?
Because my app.js, this app.js, is connected, right, to my index.html right here.
Oh, right.
It's in the same namespace, if you think about it, or it's cached. It's called, what they do in the book, they talk about it as it's being cached in the same area, the same container. Okay, very, very simply.
I wonder if you had another HTML page.
Yes.
With that.
If it was the exact same ID, it would target both pages. Yeah, it just targets. It's just like you're doing CSS selectors. So if I put a specific ID, and that's why we don't use more than one. We don't use the same ID under to different objects, right? We use if I want to hit multiple objects, I use a class, right? That's more a best practice than an ID. ID is only for one specific object that I want to target. In this case, the paragraph, right? My first paragraph of this index.html. But if I wanted to target all paragraphs, then I would use another methodology to target every single paragraph, just like we do with CSS. And you can do that. You can inject code in every single first paragraph if you want to. Okay? So that's one. The other thing I want to talk about today is functions. So what if I've got this main function, and this is a function, but there's two ways to write functions. And I'll leave you with this thought for next time, right? The first way is the named function way, right? So I want to write a function that says, replace first paragraph. That's my function that I want to write, okay? So I can do that. I want to take this code that I put in, these 3 lines of code, I want to take this and put it into a function that I'm going to call. Now, what do we use functions for? Functions are used so that we can reuse our code over and over again. So instead of having me to type this over and over again, I can just reuse this code without typing it again and again, right? So when I do that, I'm going to go here like this. I'm going to say, this is the first way. So this is the named function way. Okay, I'll put it like this. Function is the keyword that you need to use. The name of the function, right? Example would be replace first paragraph. That's the name of the function. We're making this up, right? And then parentheses, right? Replace first paragraph. And it has to, after the parentheses, you have to follow it with some curly braces.
Now, if you have a cap on it first when you
Right?
did the ID, that's still gonna recognize it.
Has nothing to do with it. It's just a naming convention for my function.
Oh, I see. So
Right.
you have to call it.
Yeah, and I'm using what we're calling Camel Case, right? So each word is going to be different, right? So my first word is always going to be lowercase. So my replace. My second word now is first. That was my first word down here, right? My second word is first, so that's going to be uppercase. And my third word is paragraph. That's going to be uppercase. So this is Camel Case. If I was going to do upper Camel Case, that means every word would be capitalized, right? But we're not using upper Camel Case. Typically, in JavaScript and other front-end languages, we use Camel Case as an example for our identifiers, variables, and functions. Okay, so this is our function, and I want to take all this code here, right, and I want to move it into my function, right? Let's do that. So I'm going to kind of use Option or Alt on the PC and move it into my function, right? Okay, and now I'm going to, just to make it nice, I'm going to format my code so it kind of indents nicely. Hey, here's a question. Am I ever going to get to this function the way it's written now? No, because I've defined my function here. So here's, let's put this in, make more details. So I've declared a name function. When I do it this way, function replace first name paragraph, that's just my name of my function. But I need to call a function in order for me to use it. So I declare the function somewhere, and then I can use the function in a function call somewhere else. So an example would be down here, I can do something like call the function, like replace first paragraph. If I write that at the bottom, replace first paragraph, it's saying, and I'll put some comments in here, call the replace first paragraph function. That's what this line does right here. Okay. So one is I've defined my function. This is the name. This is the name function way, and this is my call to the function. Okay, let's make it the other way. I want to show you the other popular way you're going to see it online everywhere. It's the anonymous function way. Okay, which is a little uglier. I'll have to admit, right? And some people don't like it. In our class, I want you to use the named function way. Okay. Hint, hint. That could be a question on the quiz. In our class, the named function way, right? In some other classes, we may use a different methodology. At least, you know, as an example, if I'm going to use this function here, right? I'm going to call it right here in my replace first paragraph, right? Okay, let's test it first to see if it works. So I want to do the same lines of code, but it's going to kick off my replace first paragraph. And let's add a little console command to let me know that I'm in that function. So I'm going to say console.log. And inside this function, the scope of this function, right, I'm going to say inside replace first paragraph function, right? Now, I told you before, JavaScript without functions is nothing. Everything that is JavaScript is functions. So this is our first foray into understanding functions. We're going to hit functions throughout the course, right? And we've got two functions here. What are our two functions? You're seeing two functions here, right here. What are our two functions?
Self-calling function and
What's that self-calling function called? Use my terminology, brother. Okay. What else? What other things do you call it? Use that big thing that it says there. Immediately invoke. I want you guys to chant it with me. Immediately invoke function expression. If someone says, "What's an iffy?" Ari, you know, It's an immediately invoked function expression or an anonymous self-executing function. I'm going to test you on this terminology, guys and girls, right? So please remember this. If you're going to memorize anything, memorize that. So I've got two. I've got the IFI, which is the outside container, right? And I've got the function, the named function, which is in the inside, right? So I've got two functions, the outside and the inside. That inside function is still considered a function, right? It's not a method. And by the way, there are methods in JavaScript. We'll talk about what those are in a second, right? But this is just considered a function. Okay, so this is one way. Let's see what it does. Let's say just run this thing, right? So again, I'm going to do my little dance with GitHub. It's just going to take me a second. I'm going to go here. I'm going to go git add dot. I'm going to git commit -m. And I'll say updated app.js. Oops. And then I'll say git push origin master. Hey, you know what? I think this is enough. I'm probably going to give you full marks now, right, for your GitHub, because I've done a bunch of commits, right? I'm showing that I'm using GitHub. I'm not done yet either, which is pretty cool. All right, let me go back up to Chrome here and refresh. Make sure I've got everything. I'm going to right-click here, and I'm going to click on Inspect so I can see my console, right? And I see that app started and inside replace first function, replace first paragraph function. I'm in there. And since my paragraph has been replaced, what I've asked it to do has been done, it worked, right? Because I got everything done the way it's supposed to be done, right? If it didn't work for you, right, then you missed a step, right? If I go back to my Visual Studio Code, here's my function. I called it down here, and then it replaced my data that was in there, that big lorem ipsum text, with this. Okay, one more, and I'll let you go for the day, right? And I have a mission accomplished for today, believe it or not, right? Is the anonymous function way. Okay, so let's comment this piece out. So I'm going to comment this. The multi-line comments are /* and then */ like in other C-style languages. There we go, right? And notice that I got this underscore over here saying, this green underscore saying, hey man, where is this coming from? I don't know, find a name called replace first paragraph function because we just commented it out, right? So this is the second way, what you're going to see, and it's uglier. It's like this. var, we're going to use the var keyword. The name of the function, replace first paragraph, right? The equal sign as an operator, function, right? And the curly braces. This is the, we're going to declare an anonymous function with a named alias, right? What I mean by a named alias is we have a variable. That variable, replace first paragraph, is a pointer, or if you think about it, an alias. It's another name for, that's what or also known as, right? AKA. So my replace first paragraph, AKA my anonymous function, that's what it means, right? When I put that equal sign, it says, take that anonymous function, this piece right here. By the way, this isn't complete. I need to put a semicolon at the bottom, right? That's why it's uglier syntax for you, right? This is one long expression, right, like this. And if I copy the stuff that's in here, let's just put this in here, right, and put it over here, right, because it's identical to this one, right? The only thing that inside of our console, just say inside replace first paragraph anonymous function, just to make it a little different, right? Notice that the call remains unchanged. My function call is identical, right? My function call for the anonymous function methodology way and the named function way, right? It's identical. There's no difference here on the replace first paragraph call, the function call. It only changes the way the function is written. So here's the way, one way the function is written. This is the named way, and this is the anonymous way. So you're going to ask, why the anonymous way, why the named way, right? Is that what you're going to ask? No. That's why it's cleaner, right? Okay, so this looks more like traditional languages, where you don't have a semicolon at the end of the curly brace. But this is JavaScript, and we need a semicolon because this is one long expression. Okay, let's see how it works. So I'm going to save this one, right? I've saved it. I'm going to go back out here, right, as an example. Let's just do it in code this time. I'm going to add this in as changes. I'm going to go up here, and because I'm connected, I need to have a git message. So I'm going to say updated app.js with anonymous function, if I spell this correctly, there we go. And then click on this little checkbox and go to push, and that'll be the same as me going through the command line. And if I refresh, it says inside replace first paragraph anonymous function now, right? Because that's the one that's triggering. So functions, as a recap, are a way of us reusing or calling about this code over and over again. I can call this function as many times as I want, right? Right now, I've only called it one time in our code, and there's no need for me to call it again. It's a silly example. But in the future, when we have future versions of my code, I can call this function or something that I want, some behavior that I want to repeat over and over again. And what would be that kind of behavior? Think about a behavior that would always repeat over and over again forever, as long as I wanted it to repeat. A loop, it's kind of the same thing. What about a button? I click on the button. Every time I click on the button, it goes to a function. That's a behavior that every time I click on it, I always want it to function. And I don't want to rewrite that code over and over again. I want just the button itself to call a function, right? To do its job, to do something when I click the button. So I click the button. I want a behavior attached to the button click. That's a function, right? I'm going to call that function when I click the button on the back end. On the front end, the user is going to see you clicking the button. On the back end, we're going to write a function to do something when the button is clicked, right? That's a great example of how we use code over and over again. Where we create something called a button event handler. That's the kind of function we're going to make. And that's going to be the topic of next week. All right, so this is good. We've done this. We've handled functions. We can also do things like pass stuff into functions, like actual parameters, which we're not going to cover today, right? You don't have to do this for your assignment number 1. The only thing I want you to do for assignment number 1, by the way, you don't have to use a function. I'm showing them to you here as a structure. Next week, we're going to go much more deeper into functions, right? And we're going to add, hopefully, to the stuff we've done today, right? So you're going to see stuff. You're also going to have an extra day with me that you're going to be able to troubleshoot your little, mini portfolio site. So when you deploy it the next day on Friday, right, I can give you some feedback. So show me your portfolio site next week. I want to ask for that, right? So have it ready, because it should be mostly ready by then, hopefully. You're not going to do it the last minute, right? Then I can give you some critique before you deploy it and get your full marks. Questions for this? That's all I want you to learn today in JavaScript. And when I test you next week, it's going to be all about document.getElementById. We're going to be talking about how to make a function, 2 types of functions. And actually, I've shown you 3. The enclosing function, which is called an IFI, immediately invoked function expression, or anonymous self-executing function, right? And then the 2 different function types, the one that's named and the one that's anonymous that we create an alias for. Okay, those are the 2 types. So do you have a question, or are you just scratching your hair? Scratching your hair. Anybody else have a question before we depart for the day? Yes. I recommend highly, and what we're going to use in this course is this methodology, this first one, because it's cleaner, not because it functions better. From a functionality perspective, a performance perspective, this has less overhead than this. All right? And we'll talk about that later on. Yeah. So this one here is, although it seems like it's more complicated, it has less overhead because the function isn't a named function and it's not waiting around to be called like the first method. The first method's waiting around to be called. This second method, once I declare an anonymous function this way, it exists. It is not waiting around to be called. It could even self-execute if I wanted to, right? And all I'm doing with my replace first paragraph variable is pointing to it. That's all I'm doing. It's a different way of looking at things. But for now, let's look at that little function as an alias. It's just also known as this function expression. Okay? Guys, I'll see you next week. Good luck on your first assignment, and I'll see you on Thursday.
Got a little snag.